I have obligation to God, you see, and that covers everything.
Ghanshyam Das Birla is the colossus of Indian industry. A life dedicated to the quest of his personal spiritual evolution in the pragmatic building of probably India's largest conglomerate of industries. The harmonics of the pursuit of the spiritual with the temporal have shaped a personality unique in its humanism. A humanism that draws its vitality from enormous courage and determination. At the age of nearly 90, with a heart attack behind him, GD, as he is widely known, is trekking the Himalayas for some 30 kilometers at altitudes of over 12,000 feet to the holy shrine of Shiva at Kedarnath. He is prompted by a commitment to continually expand his capacities, physical, intellectual, and spiritual. But more candidly,
you can say it's vanity. But there is something hidden behind this vanity. If I go to Kedarnath at my age, I think it will inspire many people to go there. Real upasana of God is the realization that there is no space in this universe without God. Once you realize and you know that you are also God, then happiness comes only in realization of God. Not that I have realized God. No, not at all. Intellectually, perhaps I can say I have realized. But intellectual realization is not realization. As they say, God defined is God defined. I won't say that it is a religious pilgrimage, but the whole life is religious. The whole life is pilgrimage. You can't distinguish between going to Kedarnath and going to office.
GD is the patriarch of the House of Birlas. The so-called Birla group of companies today have assets estimated at 2,500 crore rupees, 200 different manufacturing units, employing over 400,000 people. He is the only survivor of 4 brothers, Jugal Kishore, Rameshwar Das, and Brij Mohan, who together founded Birla Brothers in 1919.
Indian Express में था कि जो एक्साइज का रुपया रोक रखा है उसका कुछ ऑर्डिनेंस निकल रहा है तो कुछ तुम्हारे पास खबर हो तो बताना.
As he has grown older and more involved in his personal quest, much of the management of the empire is left to sons, nephews, and their sons.
और क्या और सब ठीक है.
GD is sought out by family members for advice, and he remains a strong, cohesive force and final arbiter.
अभी मैंने नंदिनी ने कही है ना मुझे छोरे ने हार्वर्ड भेज. I'm in favor of it.
A role that has increased with the passing away only a few years ago of his younger brother, Brij Mohan. The Birla group of companies are involved in a whole range of industries, from pioneering textiles, automobiles, to cotton, jute, cement, paper, sugar, chemicals, shipping, and aluminium. The family business has expanded dramatically outside India in recent years. There are almost 24 overseas projects sponsored by the Birlas in Southeast Asia, Africa, Britain, and elsewhere.
नहीं वो टेक्निकल आदमी देख लीजिए
ना तो बाकी तो जागो फिर अपना आदमी जाओगा भाई आपने टर्म मान लेगा वो जितनी प्रोडक्शन बढ़ावा
There has been a recent proposal from socialist Fidel Castro for GD to visit Cuba.
मैं मरूंगा हिंदुस्तान में बैठे
GD says he wants to die in India, in a political and economic environment where big has often meant bad. The actual ownership and control of the Birla Empire has been divided between family members, but GD remains its titular head.
Gandhiji said the least government is the best government, and I agree. Gandhiji was against controls, against too much government. And that is not Gandhiji's philosophy, that is old philosophy. Don't interfere too much. I would say even in the respect of the head of the families. If a head of the family who gets 70 or 75 or 80, he all the time meddles into the affair of the young people, he will make a mess. He should keep out. Let people work. Good or bad doesn't matter. Let them have freedom.
The story of the Birlas begins in this once tiny desert town of Pilani in Rajasthan. The rigorous climate of the desert molded the personalities and lifestyle of its people. GD believes that it was the process of growing up in Pilani amidst the unending expanses of desert sands, extremes of hot and cold weather, scarcity of water, and difficult living conditions, wholly untempered by creature comforts that were to immunize him forever to the lures of unnecessary luxury. The Marwadis, as the trading community of the region were called, often migrated to other parts of the country in search of fortune, sometimes traveling for as many as 20 days on camelback to the nearest railhead for the journey to Bombay or Calcutta. They carried with them a tradition of great personal austerity and skills in money management, often returning home only for an annual visit. GD still visits Pilani occasionally in his private aircraft, a luxury, but one that he now needs to efficiently use his time. This visit was to inaugurate a home science college for women, established by an old Pilani associate, D.P. Mandalia, considered by many to be the man closest to GD, outside the immediate family and his right-hand man.
आपका स्वागत है प्रणाम सर अरे हमारा स्वागत पिलानी में करते हो
The first Birla to set off for the city on camelback was GD's grandfather, Shivnarayan, in the late 19th century. He returned home 7 years later with a small fortune that enabled him to build a not insubstantial haveli. His son, Baldeo Das, followed him into the city. Soon, the Birlas were a progressive and prosperous family. The symbols of their prosperity were 2 camels, 2 cows, and good clothes. Nothing else set them apart from their neighbors. They remained aware of the morally corrupting influence of wealth. Even today, presiding over an enormous empire, GD is very conscious of this. Even though GD's father, Baldeo Das, spent long years in the city, his roots remained in Pilani. It was here on April the 1st, 1893, that Ghanshyam Das was born. It was Ram Navami, the birthday of Lord Ram, an auspicious birth. The astrologers predicted an illustrious future, travel to many lands, a spiritual bent, and great fortune. In his great fortune, GD never forgot his roots. Today, as they were then, the Birlas are a respected and revered family in Pilani, known more for their philanthropy than their industrial triumphs. From his early childhood, GD was initiated into the complexities of ceremonial observances. As a young boy, his day began at 5 in the morning with a cold water bath, followed by the mandatory morning puja. His education began at 4, when he was sent to school with great ceremony after prayers had been offered. School was an informal affair, where one sat on the ground and learnt the rudiments of mathematics and basic reading and writing. One's formal education was complete in 3 to 4 years. Through a succession of private tutors, GD soon exhausted the limits of their erudition. To this day, he lays the greatest emphasis on a rounded education. D.P. Mandalia compares him to the sun, effulgent, giving light and life itself.
सबको जीवन देता है, परंतु उसका आभार प्रदर्शन कैसे हो?
मैं को यहाँ व्याख्यान देने नहीं आया हूँ.
I haven't come here to sermonize, only to give you my blessings. When Pandit Jawaharlal Ji Nehru came to Pilani several years ago, he looked around and said, "Work is being done here." I also want to acknowledge that work is being done here.
मैं भी ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि कुछ काम हुआ है.
I bless you and ask you to keep striving. India has a great future. Keep working hard. It is very easy to earn money, but difficult to put it to good use. I am very happy that money is being put to good use here. Though most of his life has been spent away from Pilani, and the Birlas have moved out of their ancestral home to a newer, more modern one, they keep coming back. There is a strong feeling of belonging here. At 90, GD jokes that this is probably his last visit. But many will tell you he has been saying this for a long time. The Birlas have set up numerous educational and welfare projects so that Pilani is now a prosperous small town.
Very poorly of me.
No, never.
By 13, his formal education was complete, and his father moved him to Bombay. Barely into his teens, he was initiated into the family business. GD's work brought him into close contact with the British, who he admired for their sophisticated business skills, but was soon struck by their racial arrogance. He was quickly drawn into the whirlpool of national politics and plunged into the freedom movement and the fringes of terrorism.
I was never a terrorist. I got involved with some people who were terrorists. And so, for some time I had to go on the ground. But I never did anything what you can call criminal, according to the penal code.
If his contact with terrorism was short-lived, the freedom movement was to bring him in touch with the man who was to be one of the most important influences in his life, in integrating the temporal and the spiritual. His spiritual quest would be heightened, and the temporal called upon frequently.
I have seen the freedom movement. I wouldn't say that I have played any important part in the sense that I took any active interest in politics. But being a Gandhi man, indirectly you can say that I did take a lot of interest and I played some part.
That part was often as an emissary, a personal ambassador of the Mahatma, whose complete trust he enjoyed. An intermediary helping the British to understand the Oriental Gandhi. GD's contacts developed through his business dealings with the British, open dialogues, and were put to the service of Gandhiji.
Well, I went about meeting all the biggest people in London, those who mattered, and I tried to explain to them Gandhi's philosophy and asked them to cultivate closer contact with Gandhiji. I told them that Gandhi was not an enemy of England, but he was an enemy of political system. And they always listened to me patiently, but Englishmen, I think in their heart of heart, admired people who were working for freedom because they are free people. I wouldn't say that they were prejudiced. Even Churchill was a great man. And after we got independence, Churchill sent a message through me to Gandhiji that I am no more anti-India.
GD was frequently at the Mahatma's side and accompanied him to the Round Table Conference in London as a representative of Indian business interests. In titling his book on his relationship with Gandhiji, GD uses the phrase, "in the shadow of the Mahatma." But there was little tutelage in the association. GD had and has an unqualified total admiration for the profound moral integrity of Gandhi and the ungrudging admiration of a practical man of business for the utter realism of Gandhi's philosophy and practice of politics in the struggle for freedom. But he was never an uncritical acceptor of the more esoteric precepts of Gandhian thought. What he did imbibe was that real power comes from the building of an inner strength and can be chiseled by a disciplined life. This became a vital element in GD's grappling with the pragmatic world of commerce. Thus, even while disagreeing with Gandhi on his economic philosophy, GD took to the charkha and even launched an experiment in the marketing of khadi. GD's evolution, his industries, in the expanding markets created by confronting the monopolies of the British, and his spiritual quest, from his exposure to the supreme karma yoga of Gandhi, paralleled, in some senses, the agony and the ecstasy of a nation being born. Those were exciting and turbulent years for the young GD, and of personal tragedy. By the age of 32, he had lost both his first and second wife. On Gandhiji's advice, he never married again and was both father and mother to 6 children. It was in his early 20s, however, that his business acumen and nationalism conspired. The family had engaged in the import and export of textiles, primarily with the European colonizers. GD forged trade links with Japan instead. But the greater triumph was to follow. GD took on the British business establishment head-on. The British were in monolithic control of India's lucrative jute industry and trade. He broke through the fortress walls to establish a bridgehead for Indian enterprise in an area closely identified with the colonialism of a foreign power. He assumed control of what is now Birla Jute. He triumphed because for him there could be no failures, and what looked like failures occasionally were only a means of learning. There was always some way, somewhere, somehow, of retrieving lost ground.
I am what you may call in your language a capitalist. My method of life was quite different from the method of Gandhi. He is austere and simple and highly spiritual, I would call, not religious, spiritual,
Yes,
highly religious.
yes.
And he didn't come to me, but I went to him because I was attracted toward him. He never told me, give up your way of life. Why are you running industries? Why are you living in Paris? He never told me this. He lived with me, he died in my house. So you can see that he was a great person.
GD remained throughout probably the most generous financier of the freedom movement and the Congress Party, at a time when it was considered an act of high treason. He often met the personal expenses of Gandhiji, his ashram, and those of several political leaders deprived of a regular income by long spells in prison. A British civil servant in a report to his superiors in London wrote, "The real capital of India is not just Delhi, but Birla House." His homes were a meeting place for Congress leaders and party meetings, and his house in Delhi of tragedy.
If there is no Punarjanm, as we call it, then this can't be the end of the life. There must be something. But you know so little of the world. It is no use speculating. Death is only a temporary thing, because what was yesterday is not today. So yesterday I died, today I am reborn. That is one way of explaining Vedanta philosophy. But the death of the body, of course, is there. Everybody knows. But a man is born, a man becomes young, man becomes old, then he dies. It is a kind of change. Therefore, we have to realize that we are a limited being. And to think that you can solve the problems and you can know everything is a foolish thing. You should give up evils and become virtuous. That is all that you can do. What you call black money existence, I know it does exist. That is the evil. Evil and virtue will continue to exist side by side. As far as possible, I am trying to live a virtuous life. Whether I have done or not, that will be for the people to judge. I have no regret, because I have been striving in my own way.
For GD, painting is just another exploration, confronting newer layers of his personality, of his talents and capacities. It is this constant urge to act in the macrocosm of an industrial empire and the microcosm of the universe inside that has driven GD.
I have yet to see another individual of the level of success of GD who has implicitly lived the Karma Yoga spirit. What is to be done at any given moment for the sake of the factory or for the sake of the country, he is ready to do it. But all the time he is doing it in a spirit of a sportsman. It is not for himself or for the mere profit.
Action in the world, yet not of it. Hindalco is the jewel in the Birla crown, one of the units that GD visits often and plays a role in its running.
How does a man on the stage act? When he acts like a king, he knows he is not a king, but he knows that he has to act like a king. We are all actors on the stage of this world. We should behave like that we have got responsibility. But you should know at the same time that ultimate result depends on so many factors. But that doesn't mean that you should ignore your duty. You should work hard, you should work honestly, you should try to serve God. Knowing full well that world is not influenced by you alone. But when you work, you should feel that you have got a great responsibility. You should feel as if you alone are going to influence the whole world, because if you don't feel like that, you don't work honestly, you don't work hard, you don't work sincerely.
For GD, integrity is the guiding hand to the responsibilities and obligations of wealth in a society materially poor.
Talking of affluence and poverty, even in Russia, where they swear by the lower section of the society, all these big communist officials, they have got their data, their standard of living is very high. This difference will always remain, but you can't remove all the differences. That will continue. But I think our effort should be to remove the miseries of the people, and that could be done by creating more education and more goods for the consumption of society. More goods doesn't mean luxury, but more goods. Enough food, good houses, clothing, education, and necessary comfort of life.
This has been the philosophy of the House of Birlas. Today, they are the largest industrial conglomerate, but known just as well for their philanthropy. But it has been commerce that has provided the means and the context, not only for GD's philanthropy, but for his quest.
The areas into which he has gone have not been limited to petty consumer goods. In fact, it is more the machinery and the raw material field which he has concentrated on. And these are, of course, areas to which we ourselves attach importance. It's not enough to make a consumer good. You must have the machine and the raw material for domestic indigenous content to be high. One of the ways in which his pioneering character comes out is that he took to the manufacture of textile machinery in India long before others did. He was in the textile industry, but he was not content to be making textiles. He thought we must make textile machinery. Similarly, within his group, there was pioneering done in automobile industry, and then in some areas of research, for example, in staple fiber, to develop new raw material sources and to design the plant for using them. These are things which involved R&D of a high order.
There are two aspects of the world. One is finite. You have to work hard, produce more, educate yourself, bring in all kind of technology. But the technology changes almost every year. You should not ignore that. But at the same time, you should not look upon technology with contempt. It is most important, but that is only one aspect. The other aspect is bliss. And the bliss is eternal, never changes. It will never change. And you ought to know that what never changes is eternal, and the happiness and bliss is in that. If you work sincerely, honestly, and thinking that what you are doing is only worshipping God, you get the bliss even in your day-to-day affairs.
He has had a quality of optimism, faith in the country's future, which has never been dimmed, even when there have been occasions when he has personally felt unhappy about government policies or about the fate of his own industrial empire. But at all times, he has spoken with a note of confidence in India's future.
India has got a very bright future. Government and industry, if they cooperate, I think we can leave Japan behind us because we have got all the resources. But if anybody thinks that religion, which of course is not a correct word, dharma is the correct word, it keeping us back is not correct. In fact, this is our virtue, which has kept us alive during the last 3,000 or 4,000 years. We are not like any other country. We are highly matured people, and throughout thousands of years, we had a habit of introspection. We always criticized ourselves. That is not a bad thing to do. But at the same time, we should not minimize our importance. We are a very powerful country today, and perhaps after a few years, we shall be the most powerful country in the world.
GD's stature and achievements made him a natural leader and spokesman for Indian industry. He was one of the founders and later president of the Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, an author of the famous Bombay Plan, a blueprint for India's industrial development, drawn up in the early 40s by leading Indian industrialists of the time. As the symbol of a unique style of management and its success, GD has carried his philosophy to the far corners of the world. crossing economic and political boundaries. His investment initiatives have been marked by financial conservatism and rigid controls.
In every one of his industries, each day, each section prepares a statement of the loss it has incurred. It is called loss because an impossibly high target is set for each section of what it should achieve, and anything below that is treated as a loss. And then each plant as a whole sends a telegram to GD, I'm told daily, telling him of the loss he has incurred. Now, in fact, I have been told the story that the postmaster in his hometown, when he got a telegram of the losses incurred in a day, was so perturbed, said, Mr. Birla, how long are you going to survive? This is the order of the loss. But the loss is a fictional loss. If it goes beyond a certain level, then he feels he should send a firefighting squad to look after the problems.
GD's style of management is deeply rooted in the Gandhian model of trusteeship, in the idea of wealth held in trust for society. His employees are like an extended family who he has to protect, nurture, and at times even chastise.
इसका क्या होगा? कुछ नहीं. तुमको आज पता लगेगा कुछ नहीं है. अजीब आदमी हो तुम भी. जो कागज रख दिया वो रख ही दिया.
The rules of stringency and codes of behavior applied to his own family are not at variance with the discipline demanded from the outer family of workers. In a style that often seems heretical to modern management practices, the Birlas rarely, if ever, dismiss an employee for incompetence. The greater crime is disloyalty.
System of hire and fire doesn't exist in our group, I don't think so. And in all his concerns, if you see, he has built people and given them responsibility, trained them up, reposed confidence, and guided them. And he's probably been harsh, but he's also been soft. And he's built up a very large team of people, and I think that is the biggest contribution.
I feel that I have certain duty to perform. When I say to God, I mean to people. And I think to the best of my ability, I'm striving. I won't say that I am successful. When you talk of employment of 1,000 people, this and that, this is a very small matter. The main thing is that you must serve the God according to the best of your ability. And if you do that, then you serve the whole universe.
This philosophical foundation has given the Birlas an excellent record in industrial relations. Some years ago, at Hindalco, there was a dispute over bonus between workers and management, resolved by GD in characteristic fashion. As the union leader, Lal Bahadur explains, everyone said there was no way I could get anything over 14%. My leadership was at stake. I told the local bosses, I want to talk to GD Babu and will accept whatever he says. He came and asked me why I was putting him in a corner. I said, Babu, I only wanted your darshan and I am grateful that you came. He said, don't worry. I know how inflation has affected you. Even if I have to pay from my pocket, you will get 20% bonus. This was far beyond anyone's expectations. The organizational dynamic is like the scales of a harmonium. Each bit finds its place, and the wizardry lies in fitting the notes into their proper place in the melody. Each worker is helped to find himself and his individual level of efficiency. This helps not only his productivity, but the harmony of his inner universe as well. His needs must be looked to beyond the paycheck and one's legal obligations. Housing, recreation, medical and education for the young are the prerequisites.
He himself is an institution and not an individual. I wouldn't call him a person, but he represents, in my mind, a personality. an ideal dynamic Hindu. In the sense that if all the 600 million people had that quality in them, this country is in a tremendous mood of creativeness. I don't say that he is purely secular or materialistic, because the institutions of temples that he has built up, a lover of beauty, a lover of our art in our country, that many of the temples, especially the one there in Pillani, that Saraswati temple, it's really a marvel. This kind of symbolic declaration of the Hindu spirit in our country has not been done by many people.
Born into the Hindu tradition of Sanatana Dharma, the religion of duty, GD has given this a wider meaning, as did Gandhi, and interpreted duty in a larger social sense. As a pioneer in the field of formal education, he formed the Birla Education Trust and the Birla Institute of Technology in Pilani. An endowment of 15 crore rupees makes it probably the largest private endowment for education in India. The trust provides education opportunities from the Montessori stage to the doctoral in schools and colleges all over India. He has been a generous donor to both the Aligarh Muslim University and the Banaras Hindu University. GD's ideal is that of a broad-based education embracing the sciences and the humanities. He supports a de-emphasis on examinations. The list of Birla philanthropy is long and legend. For several years, he was the president of the All India Harijan Sevak Sangh and a leading advocate of the Temple Entry Bill to throw open temples to the so-called outcasts. There are major Birla hospitals in Bombay and Calcutta, and smaller ones attached to most of the industries. GD believes in the Renaissance man. The Birla Academy of Art and Culture provides patronage to large numbers of artists, houses a rare collection of ancient and contemporary art, and plays a vital role in helping young people develop their talents, particularly in the perpetuation of the more classical forms.
I am not a pessimist. I think the world is capable of looking after itself. According to our philosophy, Hindu philosophy, a man being is every day advancing towards God. Nothing can be set him back, but individual must work toward that end. If you don't work, then of course you get a setback, but again you start. So I am quite optimistic.
His optimism and his many contributions to the country were honored with one of the country's highest awards, the Padma Vibhushan, in the early 50s.
Living in slum, a man can be happy, and living in palace, a man can be unhappy. Happiness and unhappiness doesn't depend on the environment itself. But your duty is to see that you give comfort to every being, whether he is in slum or whether he is in palace. Did Gandhi live in slums? Certainly not. But then was he not happy, even living in palaces?
Self-discipline and self-reliance are the keys to one's evolution. Gandhiji had taught that Swadhinta was a prelude to Swaraj. that self-discipline and truth were more potent weapons than the bayonet.
If you are under the impression that I am a wealthy person, that is a false impression. Look at my consumption. Am I consuming much more than I ought to consume, whether food or clothing or anything else? Of course I am living comfortably, more comfortably.
For the younger members of the family, over whom GD presides, he is a model. He lays the greatest emphasis on discipline and is punctual himself to the second. There is a story of GD having invited a future Prime Minister to dinner, waited for 10 minutes beyond the appointed time, and then proceeded with his meal. But age catches on, and GD no longer manages brisk 10-kilometer walks at 4:30 every morning. He spends more time with his family and is particularly fond of grandson Aditya Birla.
You see, it's very hard to describe, but you can always make out if someone really loves you. And he really loves me a lot. And this was from as long back as I can recollect. He's always been very affectionate and he's always loved me very much.
For a man of 90, GD is remarkably fit and agile. He is frequently on the move, but his anchors are his son BK and his wife Sarla and their son Aditya and his family. He frequently travels to his units or their homes in Bombay and Calcutta. For the spirit that is willing, the flesh is a little weaker. Time has taken its toll of friends and friendships through the inexorable process of human mortality. But life renews itself every day. New goals to be set and met, challenges to be conquered. To learn is to grow.
Si votre lettre n'arrive pas, je suis à votre service.
Exercice. Attendez-moi ici.
Ne m'attendez pas.
Prêtez-lui 10 francs.
I have failed to achieve the essential thing, that is realization of God. That I have not done. I am still striving. I don't know when I will reach the goal. I came here for certain purpose, and that purpose has yet to be achieved. I pray God that I may achieve before I depart that.
As the elder statesman, not only of industry, but of the community, GD is frequently invited to talk to them. For him, at least a part of that growing comes from sharing his wisdom as his wealth.
मन जो है, ये एक बड़ा अजीब पंखी है.
This mind is a strange creature. It is very difficult to control it. It is written in the scriptures that there are 3 stages to enlightenment. Just as if you have to climb the Himalayas, you first start at the foothills. Like I recently went to Kedarnath. We went up to Rambara and from there to Kedarnath. In a similar analogy, Hanuman told Lord Ram, when I am centered in the body, I am your disciple. When in the mind, I feel a part of you. But when I am centered in the soul, I feel no separateness from you. I am Ram and you are Ram.
मैं भी राम और आप भी राम. रवि बाबू के शब्दों में गीत गाने
In the
के लिए
words of Ravi Babu, I came here to sing a song, but wasn't able to find my voice. I played around with the tune, but couldn't find the melody, nor the words, nor the harmony. Yet my desire remains. Oh, that I could sing my song. What I wanted to say, have been saying, has been for myself. I haven't been able to sing. I ask for your good wishes and Panditji's blessings that I find my tune.
सब गौवन गिरे आई आठल कुटिया कांधे कमरिया कांधे कांधे कमरिया.
In the autumn of his life, as in its spring, every moment is a quest. If it was once more through the temporal, it is today through the spirit. The two are interwoven. A living legend lives on in the adventure of his quest.
करुणा क्यों नहीं आवे करुणा क्यों नहीं आवे गोपाला मेरी करुणा क्यों नहीं